Hello, and welcome to another game development broadcast for Project CSK. As usual, of course, I am the creator of the project, and the online name that I go by is Des. We're going to continue working on the project like we have been doing for some time now, and today is the Tuesday stream. It is Tuesday, right? Yeah, I believe so. So we're going to continue more or less where I last left things off in the previous broadcast. There was an opportunity for me to make some progress, but then there's also some challenges, and I'll get into that a little bit later. But right now, the focus is to get the functionality working for the usable items, the pickup items that you get within the game room. And get the visual aesthetics such as the explosions, the particle effects, and primary, secondary kind of effects implemented so that we can have it be not just functioning, but visually it should make sense to the end user when they're looking at it. Oh, hi, Zach. How are you doing today? Hope you're doing well. Welcome to the broadcast. So the idea is, of course, to get it to be functional. I've already done a test before. I think I've mentioned it. I did a build on my Android device, which is a low-end Android device, and it worked really well. It turned out to get approximately 60 frames per second with some dips, right, with a little bit of highs and lows, but that's like shader caching and building out the object pool and whatnot. Once you build that stuff out and get it working correctly, it should be more or less pretty much a consistent 60 frames per second within the game room. The world, when we get to that later, that's the next big thing, of course, is going to be a whole different story, right? Because it's going to be much, much, much bigger environment. So the performance on that is going to be an interesting challenge, which we'll have to wait and see how it goes. For my testing so far, it, to be honest, has not been great, but at the same time, I haven't been performance optimizing the code, the environment, or any of the other stuff to try to, really maximize the FPS that you would get on a low-end Android device. Anything that's mid-tier or higher will, like, without even performance optimizing, is going to get easy 60 frames per second just because it's going to have strong enough hardware. But I want it to be easily playable by the largest audience possible, right? So I've even considered supporting 30 FPS for those with lower end devices that can't quite hit 60. I think 30 would be still playable and manageable to an extent. Of course, we'll have to wait and see how things go when we get to that point. But for right now, the goal is to be able to get it, the functionality, the visual aesthetics, all of that stuff kind of working for the game room, so then I can consider the game rooms playable, because I want to put out a public beta, or not a public beta, an alpha for the beta testers who are in the beta testers group, right? To get some feedback, to see how it runs on other people's devices, to jump in and play in the game rooms is what I want to do with you guys having the alpha client, whether it's a Windows, an Android device, using your touch screen, using a mouse and keyboard, using gamepad, whatever, right? Combination of all of it. Getting people testing it out, because I can't test everything myself. That's just not realistic. I test as many possible scenarios as I can think of, but there's always going to be other things that I did not think of, right? There's always going to be conditions that I can't foresee in my mind, and that's where you guys come in to help me out with that. But anyway, so that'll be a bit later. For right now, let's jump into it and kind of see where I got things to, and then we'll continue from that point moving forward. One of the interesting challenges that I have been having is, of course, the sorting, the Z depth sort, or the Z buffer sort, or whatever you want to call it, because it's still something I'm learning, right? And that's an interesting challenge, because I want to use particle effects and other types of things within a 3D environment. But the way that sorting works in 3D is a little non-intuitive when you're learning it. Once you get it and you get the hang of it, yes, an experienced, seasoned individual will have a much better understanding of it and will be able to do better workarounds than what I can do. But for me, at this point, I kind of see it as I'm kind of like entry level on some of this stuff, learning it as I go along, and sorting. There's some interesting challenges with that to this day, with modern day hardware, we still don't use certain types of sorting because the performance would be so bad even on high-end modern hardware, and I mean desktop. Like, think of like a 3090 graphics card and the best CPU, the best motherboard, the best RAM, the best everything you can think of, right? There's still certain types of sorting you don't do because it'll bring that system to its knees, which is interesting because there's some learning that needs to be done for that kind of stuff to know what to do and what not to do and what kind of workarounds you can do to still achieve more or less the same result, right? But not fall into one of these common pitfalls that are easy to walk into because you don't necessarily have a full understanding of the depth of how things work behind the scenes, right? And anyway, so that's you're going to see a little bit of that. We'll cover that. But anyway, so here's where I got it to right now. So let's do a quick play. I got my controller connected, I think. I'm not sure. Okay, so test environment. What I've been working on is this guy right here. So when you go and you drop the block, there's multiple things that happen, and the animation plays out. I guess that's wide enough. We'll squish this down a little bit. Okay. So there's a number of things that happen. We'll kind of go through it, but let's have a look at it and see what it looks like when we just play it. Right? So right now, this is what it looks like when it falls. There's a bunch of stuff going on, though. Like, if you slow this down, you'll see all the different things. So what are the different things? One is the particle that kind of makes it look like it's going fast, the little beams of white, right? So that's just the pure aesthetic thing, right? The other thing, of course, is its Y position coming down, right? And it comes down and impacts onto the designated area. And then what happens is the next animation that happens, and these are all scripted animations, more or less, using the animation curve component with my custom wrapper class wrapped around it to make use of it. So then the other one is the kind of jiggly bounce that it does, right? Which is really neat because the way that they come together gives it this nice little aesthetic, right? So the other thing I was trying to do is to have a little bit of dust come out. So as soon as it impacts or gets close to impacting onto the ground, dust would come out, kind of like it was dusty, or, you know, it just really adds to the impact, right? There isn't really any dust there, of course, but it's just to add to the overall aesthetics of it. And that's something I disabled because I was having challenges with the sorting, and I couldn't get the sort to work the way that I wanted, and I was wasting time on it, and I was like, forget it. I'll come back to it later. I'll just move on and come back to it later. But let's have a look at this animation, though. This animation is really cool, the way that it just kind of plays out. So there's two animations, and they're going back to back. One is the reveal, or sorry, fall from above. So the fall from above, it modifies the container, scale X, scale Y, position Y, and the particle effect Y. So it moves all of these things down from, sorry, the Y position gets moved. So on this, the Y position is done over a span of 0.3, I want to undo that, 0.3 seconds, so 300 milliseconds, right? And it starts from a vertical height position of 2, and it just comes straight down. So it's just linear interpolation, right? So no curvature to that at all. The other is the alpha transparency. So the alpha transparency comes in very quickly, and it comes in, again, linear interpolation, 0 to 100 in 0.2 seconds. The other thing that happens, of course, is the scale X and scale Y. So let's have a look at these things if we scale them up. So what we'll do is we'll say multiplied by 10. I really like that you can just add multiplication and whatnot in here very easily. Okay, so now let's look at this and see what happens. Right? Now it makes a lot more sense, doesn't it? That animation. So you can see the alpha transparency. You can see the skewing, the scaling of it, and you can see the particle effect. It kind of comes and goes really quickly, right? So that's one part of it, okay? So that's only one part of the animation. So when that completes, so that's fall from above. The other one is the impact bounce. So the impact bounce is, it controls three properties, and that's the scale X, scale Y, and position Y. So it does a little bit of a bounce. So what happens when we go and we multiply this as well by 10, just to slow it down? Okay, so first we have the fall, and then we have our bounce. When you slow it down, it doesn't quite look the same, but you get the idea of it. So what's happening is the X is being scaled like this, right? So we're getting this kind of scaling. The X would be, of course, the width. So the width goes large, small, and then it goes to its final value. Same idea with the Y, right? It goes large, smaller, and then to its final value, right? And then the Y position, this is the little bounce. It's a very, very minor bounce that it does, and it just goes up a little bit, and it comes down to its final resting value, right? So you put all of that together, and you put it at the current speed of what it would be played at, and this is the final result that you get. Right? So you get this very satisfying fall and a little bit of a jiggly bounce thing, kind of like Jello in a way, right? So it's very satisfying, right? Unfortunately, I couldn't get the particle effects to work for the dust effect, which I would have liked to do, but it just didn't work out. So I'm gonna leave it for now, and we're gonna move on away from that, and something we'll come back to at a later time. But for right now, I don't want to focus too much time on this because a lot of this comes down to kind of learning, right? And this project, one of the main reasons why I'm doing this is to learn this stuff, right? Because otherwise, I'm not going to come across these kind of challenges on my own. And I definitely don't do programming on my own unless I have something to do. So this is something to do. I'm going to have to get another water bottle soon. But yeah, so that's a big part of it is for me to learn how do you do these things and what are the challenges, right? How do you make something really cool? Well, what is cool? What is the definition of cool? Because it's entirely like it's perception of an individual, right? Meaning it's subjective, right? What I think might be really fun or really cool might not really match the same criteria for someone else because they'll have a different opinion, right? So for me, what I think makes sense, or at least what I'd like to think makes sense in terms of game mechanics, aesthetics, and whatever, right? I try to bring them together. And I watch a fair bit of these GDC talks as well, a game development conference. They're very popular videos, not all of them, but for the most part, they're pretty popular on YouTube. And a lot of the stuff that people say is don't try to force something is really what it comes down to. Let it naturally evolve onto something that is fun, meaning iterate on it. You start somewhere with a goal and trajectory in mind, of course, right? And along that path, allow yourself to deviate, allow yourself to learn, allow yourself to grow, experiment, do silly stuff. Sometimes you come across some really interesting, happy accidents that you look back at and you go, wow, that is downright ridiculous, but that is so funny that I actually want to take that concept, modify it, and then bring it in as an actual part of the project, right? So these kinds of things, these experiments are really important to figure these things out. And of course, there will be a lot more usages of these kinds of systems when I get into the more, I would say, advanced systems, such as when we get to the pet combat system specifically, because I'll need to brush up on my understanding of these things, because we're going to be using a lot of particle systems. We're going to be using custom shaders. We're going to be using some interesting mechanics, because I want the spells, the abilities, the casting, and that kind of stuff to look really good. I'm not looking to make it triple A. That's absolutely not the goal. What I wanted to do is make it look appropriately good for the type of game that's realistic for me to make. And I'd say so far the progress has been really good in terms of art, in terms of game mechanics, in terms of the UI, in terms of the overall usability. The challenge is bringing everything together, right? And this is something that I think everybody has a challenge with, no matter if you're indie, if you're a hobbyist, or if you're AAA, you're going to have challenges with these kinds of things, because oftentimes, so I come up with some pretty wild ideas sometimes, right? And it's like, okay, it's in my head, right? How do I make it, right? Usually the first thing that I'll do, of course, is to doodle it on paper. And if you've seen the previous YouTube videos that I've done, you'll notice that I definitely doodle. And my doodles are not the greatest, but they don't have to be, because they're perfect for exactly what they are. And that is to doodle something really quickly and just put it on paper. So you have an idea of on paper and you think to yourself, okay, yeah, this kind of works, right? So you try to envision it, like envision it in terms of seeing it on paper and envision it in your mind, so you can more clearly see it in your mind, right? So then it becomes a concept, right? And once you got it on paper, right, then you look at it and you go, okay, so maybe if I modified this or if I modified that, right? So little bits and pieces here and there, and eventually it becomes something else entirely, right? Not that it deviates from your original idea, but it takes that original idea to the next level through iteration. And I find that really interesting, because part of what we are is creativity at its core, right? The way we think, the way we act, the way we say, the way we behave, the way we look at things. Creativity drives a lot of things, if not everything, to some varying degrees, let's just say, right? And each person has a unique view, like a unique lens that they see the world and the way that they think they're seen, even though the way that you think you're seen is not actually the way other people see you. It almost never is, like, if ever, right? But our creativity allows us to take something that we see, right, and modify it to a certain way that we exaggerate certain features, we stylize other features, right? And we make it like something that's goofy or silly or just fun, or we make it something that's serious, or we make it like some really cool action thing, or whatever it may be, right? But that's unique. And that's what makes it interesting. That's unique to every single person. No two people have the same lens that they see through. That lens is unique to the bubble of your existence. And it's unique only to you. There will never be another, and there will only ever be one, right? So it's really interesting, because one of the challenges I have, of course, is taking an idea and putting it down and making it be something that's tangible, or something that is something I can show to others, right? And this is an interesting challenge, because how do you illustrate something in a way for it to be interpreted in the way that it's intended? And that's something that I don't really know is easy to explain. Did we lose stream? This is telling me that the stream it's too quiet. No, I'm pretty sure it's working. Let me know if we lost stream, or actually you wouldn't know, but let me know if there's anything wrong with the audio that, and I'll look into it. But I just thought that was an interesting notification. Anyway, so that's just me kind of going off on a rant a little bit, but those are the things I find very interesting. And part of it, of course, or should I say another part of it, is what you create brings value to someone else. Like, a big part of the inspiration of the things that I do is the old school classic games that I played from way back in the day. Nintendo, Super Nintendo, Atari, coin arcade games, and so on, Game Boy, and all of those, Genesis, of course. And then eventually to the more, I would say, powerful systems, when they start to get GPU kind of 3D capabilities, like Nintendo 64 and so on afterwards. I know some of you who are watching are going to be thinking like, oh, like, I never played Atari. What are you talking about? Yeah, I know. I'm older than you by quite a bit. But the concept of it is still, it applies in the same way. And that I'm inspired by those things that we played way back in the day, and they were really fun. They brought me good memories, even in the more difficult days, let's just say. There was something positive that I enjoyed, and I still look back at those memories fondly. And it's something that I don't think I'll ever forget. And this is me kind of taking those things that I really enjoyed and using them as a part of the inspiration of the things that I make now and choose to make, and then share it with future generations. And those people, however small it may be, however tiny of a piece of inspiration it may be, right? It affects those individuals in a very, very small way. And they will grow up, and I will have kind of passed on the mantle in a matter of speaking, right? So what I got from back in the day of playing these games, then I take that and I pass it on to future generations. And that's a pleasant idea to think about, in that we can do those types of things and pass on this, not just fun, but the educational value, the charm of these things, and pass it on to future generations. And I think there's value in that, because too often we look at education as something, we look at education oftentimes, excuse me. I'll definitely need to get another water. We look at education as something that usually comes from school or other similar types of education facilities, which is not always correct, right? You learn things all the time from every interaction, from every moment, from everything that you're doing, and so on. So it's interesting to look at it from a slightly different point of view that we've traditionally done, is that maybe school and college and those things are not the best education for certain things. For other things, absolutely, right? But there are certain things that they're not really ideal for. And other platforms such as, let's say, YouTube, live broadcasts, or even other types of interactions or other types of environments are more appropriate for learning those kinds of things. And one of them is video games. Back in the day, right? Video games were seen of as a complete waste of time. And I know it's kind of ridiculous, but you can't stereotype people the same way as you did before back in the day. But so it was seen as a complete waste of time, and it was seen as very small minority of people did it, and they were the nerds. They were the people who were outcasts. They were they were the rebels. They're the people who just wanted to, go hide in the corner and play their little video games and press buttons on a controller or whatever, right? But actually, it couldn't be farther from the truth, right? Because those people, right, that and it was not a minority by any means. I can guarantee you that. It was actually a good majority. Once people understood what video games were, of course, and the different genres and how you can play different types of games, have fun, and it just completely blew up. And now video games is bigger than the movie industry by a long shot, right? It's probably the biggest entertainment industry that we currently have globally. But it was interesting, though, because it was initially perceived to be one thing, but it was actually the opposite. And only sometime later did we actually look at it for its educational value. Because now I've read some articles, and you can't quote me, of course, on this stuff because I'm not qualified to really speak on these specific topics. But there's a certain skill set that you learn playing video games. There's a certain understanding. There is spatial awareness. There's hand-eye coordination. There is real-time puzzle solving. There is challenges and challenges and challenges that you would not face in any real-world scenario, but you can face them in a game environment where it's okay to fail, and it's okay to learn from those failures and then continue to improve and eventually succeed, right? And that's really important. I think that alone in itself is an important lesson, right? But there's other lessons that are equally important, if not more. One of them I personally find is to be challenged in the first place. Because what is challenging, right? For me, playing a game, right, is fun, right? But it's the challenge that keeps me coming back and makes it interesting, right? Like when you play a game of something like, let's say, a type of Bomberman game, right? It's really challenging to try to defeat your opponents, right? Because those opponents will be of varying skill levels, and you need to factor in your playability or your skill set, your contribution to the game session, as well as others in real time, which is a challenge in itself. And to be able to move around, to be able to look at the game from the lens of the game rules or the game mechanics, means that you need to understand the logic of what works and what doesn't work in terms of the game, and be able to, at the same time, interpret that logic and be able to apply it real time in a game round session to be able to defeat other players, whether you're playing against them or whether you're playing cooperatively with them. Right? So these are really interesting mechanics that are unique to games, right? And it's unique to that individual game. It's not unique to every single game because every single game is different, right? So there's some really interesting challenges that come with that. And it's an interesting and unique understanding for each game. That's why no two games are really the same. Well, there are similarities, of course, but they're not really the same, meaning they're not exactly the same. But it's really interesting. And the other thing that I've mentioned many times before as well is that it's another factor of it that I really enjoy personally is the human interaction part. I think that really adds a lot in terms of what it has to offer, because we're still only barely scratching the surface of understanding and standardizing not only communication protocols that we use, but also things like what is considered as appropriate behavior, such as behavior patterns online, what is considered as, let's say, even something that is fun but educational, or fun and challenging, or a mix of another variation of category, but it can be applied in so many different types of games, because you can have first person shooter, you can have real time strategy, you can have Defense of the Ancients, you could have whatever you want to have, right? There's just so many types of video games where it's really the limitation isn't even really a limitation. It's the vision of the creators, one or more individuals who go and make something like this and then share it on the internet. So it's really interesting. But anyway, I'm kind of going off on a tangent here. So let's shift our focus back to the game. And what I want to do is I want to take the block that we've made, because right now we have the popsicle, we have the block. So this is the animation that I'm going to use for now. There's still room for tweaking. Once I bring it in and I'm able to actually see it in the game room, then I'll be able to tweak it some more and get it to be a bit more appropriate for the environment that it's in. What we haven't done yet is the popsicle effect, the secondary effect of when it explodes, and then also the freezing effect. So those are some of the things that we'll take a look at as well, but I'm going to be right back. I'm just going to grab another water. I'll be right back though. Okay, so got my water. Let's have a look at this and see kind of where we're at with it. And we're on the right screen, audio. Yes, okay. So I just want to change the scene here to the other scene, because the popsicle isn't working on this scene. I didn't get a chance to quite fix that. There's some stuff that I definitely need to figure out. It's just making the time for it is really difficult sometimes, right? Because there's stuff that easily consumes my time very quickly, and it consumes a huge chunk of it very quickly. And even though I try to plan for everything, I just, time is rather elusive in itself. Okay, so we'll go to here, play, controller, connected. Okay. Okay, so we have shield, we don't have block, we got explosive, and we got popsicle. And that's the current particle that effect that I'm using. It's not something that I think I'm going to be using in the final, but for getting the idea across, I think it's good enough that it gets the idea across, and I think that's important. So what I want to be able to do is use the block, and then let's see, we want to use the block. The shield, I don't think I'm going to get into that. I was I was thinking of changing the shield to being a 3D object and using a Fresnel lens effect and making it look really cool and all that stuff. But that's not the best use of my time for right now. So likely what I'll do is I will just go with the current shield for now. And then similar to the other stuff, we'll come back to it at a later time and fix it up and get it to look really good. But for right now, what I want is to be able to use the block. So right now when I press it, nothing happens. We can use bomb, we can use popsicle, we can enable and disable shield, but for block, it does nothing. So let's have a look at that and see what we can do about that. So over here on input actions control, we have test primary action, quaternary, tertiary. We need a secondary. Because the way the button control scheme works, I believe, is when you look at a controller, so when you look at, that's not the right one. I want the button IDs. I think this is it. Okay, so we have button, the south button as it's called in Unity. So this one is called button south. Oh, this is actually 0. I thought this one was 1. And I thought something else was 0. Okay, well that's fine. I call this one primary anyway. So primary, I guess 0 makes sense. So the button south is the first button. The button east is the second button. It's 0 based, so whatever number I say is of course +1, right? So this is called button east. This one is button west, and then this one is button north. So by default, button south, this is the explosive. This one is the block. This one is the popsicle, and this one is the shield, right? So right now we have button primary, we have tertiary and quaternary. So we have tertiary and quaternary. We don't have secondary. So that's the one that I need to implement. And the cool thing is that I don't have to, actually I can just copy and paste it. I don't have to worry about figuring out most of this stuff because Unity does a lot of this stuff behind the scenes for me, which is really nice. Okay, so we have bomb add test, shield use test, popsicle use test, and then let's go to here and let's create a new one. And instead of popsicle, we will call this one block use test. And we'll give it a unique ID. Oops. Okay. Go back here, paste that into there, grab this. So we got that in clipboard. So where is our secondary? Let's see, shield, throw popsicle, no. I want the actual input event function. Tertiary, secondary. So this is where I want it, and we want to do a conditional check if test actions equals true, and we'll move this line up. So that way, if testing is true, we'll call a test function. Otherwise, if testing is false, we just don't call the function. Okay, so with this though, now we need to listen in for this event inside of our game room. And I think our listeners are right here. Yeah, okay. So this is where all the test stuff is. So I'll just duplicate that line, and we will change this to being block use test, handle, instead of popsicle, we'll change it to block usage test. Okay, so that's our add, and then we'll come down here and we'll add our remove. Anytime you add a listener, it's generally a good idea to also add the opposite, which is really to remove it. Okay, so we'll put this function right here and say private void I event object IE. Okay, so what we need is similar to the popsicle use test. We'll need the event object, I believe. Event object get component input movement controller. From input movement controller, we get direction. And yeah, okay, so we definitely need that stuff. Okay. So we need this. Let's see what else we can grab out of there. So we need that. The random number thing, I don't know if we really need that. Position start, we absolutely need that. Let's see, input movement controller and then direction. So we need the facing direction. And then I think more or less we can just create the block. I think. But let's do a quick debug. Debug.log, and we'll say block usage test function called. Okay. So we'll go back here, give Unity a sec to catch up, and then we will give it a quick test run. Okay. Okay, so when we press the button, okay, and there it is. So block use test function called. So that's perfect. That's exactly what we want. Okay, so that's working. So what we need to do next is kind of figure out how do we call that function. So let's clear our bookmarks, and we'll bookmark this line. And then I want to see how do we create a block at all. So for that, we will need to go and see explode object. No, we don't want that one. Create, nope, not that. Pick up object. I would just want one of them to sample. That sounds very similar to what we want. Okay, so let's jump to our bookmark. Okay, so this one creates, oh, that creates multiple. We want a singular. And that's not the right function. That's ground cubes. We want the blocks specifically. Do we not have what? I thought we did. Oh, that's what I wanted. Okay, I grabbed the wrong one. That's what I wanted. So let's replace this. Okay, so this means that we would need the position converted to vector to int. I don't want to do that. Can we just pass in position? I want to just pass in position. I don't want to convert to vector to int and then have it be converted back again. I don't think I have a function for that. I may need to create it. Collider pass through. Okay. No, I don't think I have a function for that. I'll keep looking for a little bit and see if I can find something, but I don't think I have that. Oh yeah, and I have a new dictionary class that I was working on this over the weekend. I didn't quite complete it, so this is a more generic class, which gets a little confusing, to be honest. So I kind of stepped away from this one because this is going to replace these dictionaries. So all of these will be consolidated into one single, more versatile one. So then I don't need to manage this many dictionaries. They'll all come down to just a 2D dictionary, which will be really nice and allow this to be more scalable and versatile. And this will get used throughout the rest of the project as well. So this is going to be an important class that I'm working on, but it's one of those tricky ones that requires a certain finesse, let's just say, for it to work, and it's definitely finicky, let's just say. But I'm not going to get into that. So we got indestructible pillars, we got destructibles, explosives, pickup item, environment structures, and we got environment projectile popsicles. Right, because I haven't added this yet. That's why it's grayed out. We're not using it yet. I need to bring that in as well, which we will. Currently, it's just not being stored. As soon as you use it, it just goes through its life cycle, and then it just gets recycled back into the object pool, which is not bad, but at the same time, we want to keep a reference to it just in case we need to preemptively stop it. We need to be able to have a reference somehow that we know how to access it. So basically just a pointer. Okay, so let's see. What I want is specifically, I think this one. So let's see, where are we using this? Okay, so this is being used here on here, which is a old way of kind of doing things, which I'll be stepping away from, I think, moving forward. This here on animate and recycle, we just destroy it. Remove destructibles, okay. Recycle destructibles. Okay, so it's definitely going to go into this one, but from the looks of it, I just don't have a function for it yet. So we'll need to, or not a function, should I say, for how I intend to use it. And this one is kind of legacy. This is, I mean, okay, but at the same time, I don't want to be using it in that manner. I want to pass in a vector3 position. So we'll say public void. Actually, we can probably just copy this whole thing. Let's do that. Okay, so it'll give me a warning, of course, because that means we have duplicates. So this one will be a vector3 int, and we will say position start, variation ID, and then we will say Boolean play. No, No, we want it to be, we want the animation to be separate. So we're actually going to end up calling what we're going to end up calling is going to be a different function which will call this function. So it will be public void create falling environment block. And then this one here will take these and then we'll put conditionally Boolean play intro equals true by default. So that'll be conditional. And then that's the one that we're going to call here. So when we call environment map, we're going to call this function. We're going to give the position start variation ID and yeah, okay. And then the variation ID is going to be, for right now, I think it's variation 4. Okay, and we'll come back to this later. Okay, and then there is, of course, the play intro, which will be default to true, so we don't need to pass that in. But the way it's going to work is that one will call this function. This function will take position start and a variation ID, and it will return the reference to the object. Yeah. It will return the reference to the object. And then we will check if play intro equals true, this dot play whatever the whatever it is that we're going to be doing. So this is the function that we're going to be calling. Oh, we already have that. Okay, so this one was a reference. So we still need is position start. We need variation ID. Variation ID is not that important right now. What we do need is position start. That will call position start. And then this one here, instead of taking this, now we want to also pass in ID. We want to pass in ID is going to be string, and I believe we called it key ID. I want that to be passed in. So at this point, it will be string key ID equals whatever. I think we used a random number here. Yeah, we did. Let's just do that for now, because this is our test. Yeah, for testing, I think we can do that and we can get away with it. But for live game, it's going to be a bit different. So for right now, for the testing portion of it, it's okay. So we'll pass in key ID, position start, and variation ID. That calls this function. This calls create destructible. This will do the logic. So key ID will be over here. Position start needs to be a vector 3. Position start. Right. Oh, yeah, it needs to be converted over. Oh, do I have a variation of this? I do not. I don't want this kind of logic here. I think I need to duplicate this function. Yeah, I think I need to duplicate that function and simplify it. I have quite a bit of similar functions that are somewhat redundant at this time, but I just haven't consolidated all of them because I'm not sure yet what the exact criteria is going to be in the cascading effect that will come from it. So I'm okay with some redundancy at this time. That means this current function as well. I wonder though, can we make it a bit easier? Because we call this function. What's the purpose of calling this? So this stuff is kind of unfortunate, but also necessary. But that can be moved into a separate function entirely, and that can be a separate function on its own. So really then what we're doing is getting it from the object pool, calling restore, because it's coming from the object pool and needs to be reset, reparenting it, setting the local position, naming it. Oh wait, this is wrong one. It's the pickup item. Same idea. So if this can be moved to its own function, let's do that, because I keep needing to use something similar to this. So I want to move that to its own function. That way it separates this out, because the same thing gets copied and pasted over and over. So what we want to do is convert vector 2 to vector 3. Okay. Let's go and add that somewhere in the bottom. And it looks like we already have it. No. Calculate grid offset. No, it's different. Similar but different. But this would be where I would put it. Okay, so this will be private vector 3, and this will be what can we call it? Position 2D to 3D, I guess, for lack of a better term. So we're going to pass in vector to int. I think. Is it vector to int? I forgot already. Yeah, okay, so it's vector to int multiplied What is this offset thing that I'm doing? I don't remember, but okay. So we have position. So we'll change this to position, position. And then what we're going to be doing is returning new position. So we'll pass in a 2D position and on an XY. And what we get is a 3D position with the offset and the position correction. Yeah, I think this could work for us. Okay, so let's bookmark this, and then we'll come back to that later. Let's go back over here. Okay, so when we call create destructible goes and calls this function. This function, so all of this is redundant. Then that means all we need really is just this part. And this. And this. Okay. Let's bookmark that because we'll be coming back to that. Okay, so instead of create destructible, let's go with a different approach. Let's try to see if we can reduce all the requirements and whatnot and just simplify it. So then later we'll deviate entirely. That's the wrong one. This is the right one. Where's my... I didn't bookmark it. Oh, okay. I thought I did. Okay. So we'll put these here for now. Dynamic object will be that. We'll bookmark this. Let's jump back to not there. Here. So we have that. Then what we need to do is the restore, the setting this stuff here. We can add to dictionary afterward, I think. Okay. So that means we need to set primary. We need position new. Position new will be position start. And then the type primary, secondary, object size. Oh, yeah, okay. We kind of need that too. Okay, so we'll just take that from there for now and just plunk it here. I know, like I said, a lot of redundant stuff, and I'm trying to... I don't want to use that one function that I have. I think it's not the right direction to go. But anyway, so what this does is it sets all the appropriate parameters, type, secondary, object size, poolable object, that can be moved over here. Get rid of this line. So we get it from the object pool. If it doesn't exist, we create it. From the object pool, we can restore. We set the parent we set the local position, so where it's going to be. We set the appearance stuff, update the appearance, and then we add it to the dictionary. And then if play equals true, we play it. Okay, so this should result then I also made this function, which we're not using. So let's comment this one out for now, just so I don't accidentally forget about that later. Because we kind of bypassed a bunch of stuff to try and just do this. Because a lot of this stuff can be somewhat simplified to a degree, but at the same time, it's it needs to be versatile, and that's the challenge. That's why I had that longer function, which did some of this stuff, because this is somewhat redundant. Okay. So for those of you that are new, hello, and welcome to the broadcast. Just doing a little bit of functionality on my project. If you like this broadcast, of course, feel free to hit that follow button, and you're welcome to join the Discord channel and all of that good stuff. But I do broadcast on Tuesdays and on Fridays. And if you have any questions, or if you just want to say hi, you're welcome to it. But of course, if you want to just sit back, relax, and watch me work on the project, that's perfectly fine too. I don't mind. Okay, so now the block should be, oh, and there it is. Wow, okay. So I'm sure you noticed that I got tossed away from using it, and it's in the wrong spot. So if I stand here and I use it, it's directly on top of me, and it flings me out, which is wrong. We'll correct it, of course. So it needs to, one, be in front of me. The collider, the reason why it's pushing me is because the collider is not, I need to set that walk-through collider. And then I also need to set the animation for it to play that intro animation. So that's another important piece of it. So let's address those one by one. First, we need to set the collider. So the collider portion of it is, how did we access it? If we go through, nope, environment. I think it's this one. Okay, so collider, how do we, is there a public reference we access? How did we do it for the explosive? Yeah, how did we do it for the, oh, okay, it's literally right there in front of me. Okay. Oh, and we need to set is obstruction true. Okay. I definitely don't want to forget that. I know I'll forget that later, so let's move that in first. And then we need a collider to allow us to pass through. Yeah, so we need it to allow us to pass through initially. And we can do that probably, probably in this area. I know it's a lot of parameters to set. That's why I want to streamline some of this stuff, but I haven't, because I keep changing the code in different areas, they affect each other, and I can't seem to quite find a happy medium to it just yet. We will, of course, get there at a certain point, just not yet. So it's going to be a little bit messy before it starts to get cleaned up. Okay, so with that, we should be able to say is obstruction is true, which is definitely a good idea, because then that means the explosions don't go through the object. They stop at this object that is an obstruction. So that affects the particle explosion and other similar things. And then the allow pass through is what kind of flung us out, because the wrong colliders, or it's not necessarily wrong, but the colliders are active at a time that doesn't really make sense. So that should fix that. And then what we'll need to do next is the position. So right now, if I place it, yeah, okay, so it's not kicking me out. But as soon as I go out of it and I try to go back in, so now it's something I can't go through. And that's intentional by design, of course. So it blocks your path. Oh, that one kicked me out though. Wasn't supposed to. Okay, so that's not fixed. Okay, so I thought that would fix that. I was wrong. What's the difference then? So we need to see is the difference between the explosive we need to see the difference between the explosive and the environment object. I think their colliders are a bit different in the way that I use them. So we've got collider and we got bounds nested under the collider pass-through inhibitor. So collider by default is not trigger, it's enabled. So both are enabled by default. But then if we go over to the environment dynamic object, yeah, collider, these colliders are different, I believe. Yeah, it's structured differently. Okay, so we have the bounding collider, so not the trigger, on the outside. And then we have the inside, we got the trigger collider. Okay, so let's have a look at that and see on the explosive object. I guess it doesn't matter because they're both in the same location. Interesting. Okay. How can we test that? What we'll do is we will, let's have a look at that code though. When we say allow pass through, this calls allow pass through modified, merge to composite, that's legacy, it needs to be renamed. So collider bounds dot enabled equals false. So this is the one that's kicking us out. And then check player collision. So it gets player character model. Movement controller, and then it goes and checks is user controlled. Where's the actual? Okay, so here's the actual intersecting. So this is what I'll need to test. Right, I did this manually because I couldn't rely on the Unity collider. Yeah, the Unity collider does some weird stuff, so I had to calculate this stuff manually. Basically, it's just calculating two boxes, if you think about it, two 3D boxes to see if they overlap. Relying on Unity to do that was not working in the way that I needed it to, because Unity requires a certain amount of time for it to process an object that is reactivated when it was previously disabled, and you re-enable it in the hierarchy. It takes time for it to do its calculating, so it gives you unpredictable results. I needed 100% accurate results, so I ended up just doing the collision check myself. And that worked out for me. However, let's output this here, and we'll say intersecting. If intersecting equals true, return true. Otherwise, return false. Check player collision. That was, nope, not that one. This one. Check player collision. I want to enable some debugging. Yeah, actually, I'll enable those instead of this one here. I think that would be better. So collision with player is false, collision with player equals true. So let's have a look at that and see. This way, we'll get a visual output, and then I'll be able to look at it and see, because it should be accurate, because it worked well with the explosive, so in theory it should still work the same here. It's just for whatever reason, something is not quite right. Of course, I'm doing something that's not right, but let's see what happens. So when I press it, collision with player equals true. So when we step out of it, we can't walk through it anymore. Okay, so the first one worked, second one. So this one was wrong, because I'm on top of it and it's saying collision with player is false. That is not correct. Of course, that's not correct. So that means something didn't go right there. So if I move a tiny bit, it's going to kick me out, right? Like that. So that's not right. So let's try it again. So that's incorrect again. So it should have been true. It shouldn't be false. So it just kicks me out like that. Okay. How come it worked the first time, but it didn't work afterward? That's an interesting question I can't help but to think about. So why is it working the first time, but it didn't work the following 2 times after that? Let's try it over here. Okay, so that's false, meaning that's wrong. So if I nudge my character to the right, it just kicks me right out. Okay, so there's something going wrong with that validation check. When it says check player collision, what's it checking against, and where is it failing? It could actually be this. No, I can't be that, could it? I think what we'll do is we'll use a breakpoint probably, and just see. Okay, let's do a breakpoint. I don't use breakpoints nowhere nearly as often, and the reason is it's not that I don't want to. It's so slow. It's so slow to use breakpoints, and it's just not fun. Okay, so when we call this function, what I want is basically we will go to, where is it? It's been so long since I used it, I totally forgot. Debug, where is breakpoint? Okay, so it's F9. Okay, so we got our breakpoint. And then what we do is we hit attach to Unity. So it connects to Unity. Okay, now it's ready. So now we can run it. And let's see what happens. Okay. So it hit the first breakpoint, and that's because of the other object. So we want to skip this. I'm going to tell it to continue. I did say continue. Okay. All right. So now it's still waiting, right? So as soon as I press this now, we should hit that other breakpoint. Okay. So there's our breakpoint. Okay. So it calls find objects. Okay. So let's step through it then. So what we'll do is we will step over, step into, next statement. So we'll go step into. Okay. So is it null? No, it's not. There is one valid object. Okay. So there's one valid object. Okay. So let's step into, over, out. Nope. We want F11 is into, F10 is over. So we'll go in. Okay, so it goes from there to here. So let's keep going in, get component, okay. User controlled is false. Is user controlled. So we get the value from is user controlled. Okay, so it is user controlled. Character model, okay. And then we get to this point. This is the main part where it should succeed or fail, right? So let's see, at what point does it fail? Because that means that this was my custom collision check is the one that would potentially not work well or isn't working well. Okay, so that's the debug stuff. I don't really care. I should have stepped over that, but whatever. Oh, and I do it again. Okay, let's skim through this. Okay, so now we get to the actual calculations. I want to see at what point it's failing. Because right now we know that what? It just jumped over it. It completely just jumped over it. And it's returning false. How did that happen? I think I know what's happening. I'm setting position after. I need to set position before I set allow pass through. I think that's what it is. So let's stop this. I think that's what it is. It's the order of execution of the logic. So the logic works. It's just the order of it that I put it in. That's what was wrong. Is kind of what I'm thinking. So let's go back to it. We can close that. Let's disable that for now. We were in, I forget where we were. Collider pass through. And yeah, that's exactly it. So this needs to be called after this. So that was my mistake. So I need to move that below this area. So make sure to set this before calling that. And then on this one, I'm going to say, make sure to set position before calling this, before this point. Okay, so that should fix it. Because I knew I tested that logic and it was working. Oh, sorry, wrong screen. But I knew I tested that logic and it was working fine. So all I did is just change the order of the execution of a couple of lines, and now it should be working correctly. Really, all I did was I just brought this one down. It was initially up around here, so I just brought it down below this area because I need this to execute first, and then I can call this. Before it was the other way around. So now that we got that, when I go and run this, it should be working correctly as expected. Okay, so that's correct. That's correct. That's correct. That's correct. That's correct. Okay, so I'm confident it's working correctly now. Okay, and I can trap myself. Okay, so yeah, that was really it. It's just me not thinking about it before I do something like that, and then wondering afterwards what happened. It was working fine. Okay, so with that then, that means the next step is to set the position. Currently, what we're doing is the position, we're setting it directly on where the player is, but we want to actually use direction, right? And then offset based on direction. So direction is going to be your facing direction, right? And then what we're going to do is same thing as we did pretty much here. So direction will basically be position. So it will offset current position. Direction is, oh, it's vector 2. Okay, so we need to have start position, and then we need to have new position. Vector 3, position new, equals position start, right? And then position new x plus equals direction direction multiplied by config dot, nope, we want width, cell size width. Why isn't it not liking that? This is a float direction.x, of course. Okay. And then we'll do the same thing for the y. And instead of width, it'll be height. And the reason why I'm saying cell size width and height is because that's the exact size of each block that you stand on. We just want it to nudge over one block in whatever direction we're facing, right? So then we'll use new position instead of position start, and then that should, in theory, give us the result that we want. Whether or not I got it correct this time, that's a different matter entirely, but we'll see how it goes. Okay. So let's see what happens. And then, of course, the next step is to do the animation, and that way we'll trigger the animation. You'll get to see it in its full glory. Okay, so that's right in front of us. Oh, the collider's oh, right, because it's a pretty big collider. Okay, so that just lets us walk right through it. Okay, so I'll need to nerf that collider a little bit. I think it's a bit too big, but it goes directly in front of us, which is correct. Oh, that looks a little strange. Oh, I think it's higher up. That's why it looks strange. Yeah, that its height is messed up. Of course, because I put it in the wrong place. Like, you can't actually put it in that place. There's a collider of something that it's kind of sitting on top of. It just looks a little off when you look at it from 2D, but when you look at it from 3D, it makes more sense. You can see it's vertically up above something. So it's a collider of something, likely the mushroom next to it or whatever. But no, that's fine. Okay, so that's working. I see this as a success for now. So let's get the animation now. This is what kind of really brings it to life, is now enabling that animation portion of it. So we can take that out. Random number, we don't really care. What we do care about is, so at the end is play intro. Is it play intro? I forget. What was it? What was that? Actually, I have it here. At least I thought I did. Environment, projectile, no. Pass through, no. Projectile is a no. It's a part of environment dynamic object, I believe. Yeah. Play animation reveal block. So that's what we want. So dynamic object, we want play animation reveal block. Okay, so that should then now play out the whole thing. So now we'll get to see what it really feels like and looks like to use the block. Of course, I'll need to switch to the right screen. Okay, and we'll just give it a moment to load. I've been trying to get this piece of it working for a while now, so I'm looking forward to it. And then, nice. It's a bit slow, to be honest, but it looks pretty good, right? Like it feels pretty good, but it's just slow. That's the only thing. I think if we speed it up, it'll be a lot more satisfying. And the part I want to speed up, and that's why I broke it up, is so the falling and the wiggly animation are two separate things. So I can independently modify them. So let's go back to the other scene now that we know it's slower, and let's kind of play around with it a little bit and get it to speed up, and then we'll go back and we'll test it there. And this is why it's good to test it in numerous different locations. So now I know that this is not fast enough. It needs to be way faster. It really needs to be way faster. Okay, the question is how much faster, right? So let's bring this into focus. Okay, so let's play with that animation. Okay, so the one that we want to modify is not the impact bounce, but the fall from above. So what are the timings on this one? The timing is the scale X, scale Y. We will need to adjust those, but it's really the main one is the position Y will cascade to the others. So let's cut position Y from 3 to 2, so that comes down by a whole 30% or 1/3, so 33.333%. That means then the alpha will now need to be faster, right? So then that means the scale will now need to be faster. Okay, so let's see how this looks. Yeah. I'm thinking the wobble animation also can be sped up. I think that looks pretty good though for the fall. It's fast enough that you can see it, but it's not so fast that if you blink, you completely miss it. Because it's supposed to be fast. It's supposed to be instant, near instant, not exactly, of course. But that's just the animation, though. The colliders are separate object. So the colliders exist the whole time. They're already present, right? So the animation and the colliders are independent from each other. So the second it's created, excuse me, the second it's created, the colliders are already active and they're ready to do their thing. The animation is just a visual thing. Okay, so I want to preserve this. So we'll say copy component, stop it. We will then click on the three dots and say paste component values. So then that should apply our times. And then we'll go to overrides. We'll say animation property curve, and we'll apply to prefab. Okay. So then we'll switch back to the other scene, which was this scene. And let's see how it looks. And then we'll go adjust the wobbliness of it afterward. Okay. Yeah. Speed-wise, that makes way more sense. But now the wobble is a bit slow in my opinion. It has room for improvement. But the speed of it coming down is pretty good. So I'm definitely satisfied with that. So let's go and have a look at the wobble now. This is what's so good about separating them out. How are we doing for time? Oh, wow. That time just flies by. Okay, so the speed is good. We want to do that wobble next because that wobble is a bit slow. We want it to be a bit faster. Either A, make it faster or make it more wobbly. It's one of the two. But right now, that time of it wobbling doesn't match the velocity and speed on impact from a visual aesthetic point of view. Obviously, it's not mathematically accurate, and it's not going to be. That's absolutely not the intent, right? The intent is to get it to be satisfying in a cartoony aesthetic kind of way, right? So right now, the speed of it coming down is pretty good, but the what do you call it? The wobbliness, the jiggly jello part, that's too slow for me. So let's go and modify that. So previously we did the fall from above. Now we will do the impact bounce. So the impact bounce, what we can do is we can directly just reduce the speed, or we can change the instead of it just doing this kind of a wobble, we can add more points along the wobble. So it wobbles more, but still wobbles for the same duration. But before we do that, let's take the simpler solution and just go with reducing the duration. So reduce the duration on all of them because they are the same. Okay, and let's have a look at that. That's a little bit better. Not quite still where we want it to be. So let's go with 3.3. So this is at 60% of where it was. So we brought it down by 40%. You kind of lose a little bit of the charm there. Let's disable the position Y. Yeah, it doesn't have that same charm. And I just noticed that I did the X and the Y, I did them incorrectly. Yeah, so the X is supposed to go, um, so when it comes down, the X is supposed to be wider, and then the X is supposed to get less while the Y scale gets wider and vice versa, right? That creates that overall wobble, and I see that now that I've done this incorrectly, which is part of the reason why it didn't quite look right. So let's fix that. The position Y, that little tiny bit of movement, I'm not too concerned about that. We could even probably just remove it entirely. It just adds a little bit to the overall. It's like a finishing touch, which we can just disable that for now. So let's focus on the X specifically. So we'll disable the Y. Let's focus on the X. Okay, so on the X, that's okay, but not really what we want. We want the X to start from value of, I believe, 8. We want it to go wide. We want it to go wide, so let's slow it down. We'll actually slow it down significantly. So we'll make it a 3-second animation. Okay, so that's a bit too slow. Let's make it a 1-second animation. 3 is too slow. Okay, so it comes down and it goes wide and then it goes back down a little bit. Okay, so we need to adjust this curve. This curve has, okay, so first this is noticeable to me. This needs to be like this. This is fine. That is fine. Okay, so when you look at it just on the X, you don't get the same visual aesthetic of it, but you kind of get the idea. Okay, so that's X. And then the Y is actually supposed to be the inverse of the X. So this is where I messed up. This is supposed to go the other way, like this, of some sort. So the inverse of that would be dip down, up. Oh, okay. Yeah, I did that wrong. It should dip down. Let's delete that one. And we'll adjust this. So it should dip down and then go up. Is kind of what should be happening. Let's level that out a bit. That's fine for now, I guess. Can actually move this a little bit here. Okay, so it's supposed to go the opposite, right? So what this is the opposite. That kind of makes sense. Let's see if it works out though. So let's go and disable the X and we'll just go with the Y now. Okay, and that's going really fast. So let's slow it down. We'll make it a 1-second animation. Okay. So that should allow it. So when you do both X and Y, they're working together. That's not what I was expecting. That's not what I was expecting. It should have gone. Oh, I think it's the value that's off. Okay, so let's go value. We will change this to X. No, that is kind of right. Let's see on the fall. Where's the fall? Where's the X X starts at 0.7, ends at 0.8. Okay, so it ends at 0.8. That means our start should be at 0.8. The Y, sorry, not scale Y. Oh, right. It ends at 1, so it should start at 1. Oh, right. We can't do 1 and 1. It won't work. We need to go... Actually, I don't think we can do 1 and 1. Let's try it and see if that works at all. I don't think it does. Yeah, I didn't think so. Yeah, you can't do direct 1 and 1. It needs to be slightly off. So we will say value 0.99. So the start value will be 0.99, but now it's going to be so faint you're not going to see it. So we need to multiply this by 100. So if start why is value 0.5? It should be value 0. That was interesting. Should be 0, not 0.5. Okay, so that still won't work. It needs to be multiplied significantly. So this can't be 0. This will need to be, I think it needs to be a negative. I forget. I need a reference. What can I reference? Where am I doing a similar thing? The expressive emotes. Oh no, I don't have it in this project. Ah, okay. Bear with me. I need to open the other project to see how I did that. Because when you're using this type of animation, you can't go 1 to 1. It just doesn't work. And you can't go from positive to negative without a, positive to negative without a workaround. I don't know why that is. It's something that I'm not sure of myself. It's something that I've had to just kind of do a workaround, which is to offset the values a little bit and then multiply them by 100. So let's open up the other project. Okay, so while that loads, we'll let that load in the background. We're going to likely lose camera because that'll break my camera connection. And we're kind of running out of time here. We are running out of time. Okay. For those of you that are here, if you do enjoy the broadcast, please hit that follow button. You're welcome to join the Discord, and you're welcome to follow me on Twitter or on what's it called, Instagram, if you use those things. Okay, so camera's dead. Okay. Yeah, I don't broadcast often, but I do broadcast consistently on Tuesdays and on Fridays on pretty much the same time schedule. So if this works for you, great. If not, you're welcome to watch the videos on YouTube at a later time. That works for me too. So whatever works for you works for me. So what I want is the other project. So emote bubble. That's what I want. Okay, and we will enable it. No, I don't want to use plastic. Okay. So the emote bubble. Okay, so that's 0. Okay, so that's not it. One of these bubbles had it. So intro 0. We got intro 1. I need a... One of these will have, this is it, I think. Yes, this is it. This is the workaround. So value start 0, value end is minus 99. Okay, sorry, value start was 0 or 1? Value start is 1. End is minus 99. Okay, that's what I need to do. So we need to go value start. Where were we? Value start. So we'll say edit value. Value will be 1. And then this one here will be edit value, and it will be minus 99. So it gives you 100 difference because we're going from positive 1 to minus 99, but you can see the scale factor is huge now. You just close it and reopen it, and you can see it's kind of messed up, but we can easily fix that. Okay, so now we can do that curve. We can do a reverse curve. I don't remember exactly. I remember it was something like this, but if it doesn't work, worst case, we'll just reset it. Okay, so let's go and flatten. Oh, it is already flat. Okay, so that means we need to curve this out, move this up above here, this roughly in this area, we'll say. Okay, so this will be hopefully something that works. Let's see if it works though. Not what I wanted. Of course not. Okay, so it's going from value of 0.99 to 1. We need it to be able to go the opposite way. And I'm not sure that was the right reference. So let's look at some of the others. .99 value of 1. Yeah. No, this should have worked. 0.99 value of 1. So it's nearly the same. Okay. So let's just try a different curve and see. Maybe it's the way that I did the curve. So what we'll do is we will delete that key and delete that key and then go flat and go flat. Close enough. Okay, so let's see what that does. Okay. So that went to 0, which is not exactly what I wanted. Okay. 0.99 to 1. I just want to be able to do maybe we need to go the other way. What if this needs to be -1? Oh, this ended up being 0. It needs to be 1. That might be it. Nope, not it. So we'll say edit key. Let's go value of -1 and we'll make this one positive 99. So we still have 100 difference. Let's see what that does for us. Interesting. Very interesting. That's definitely not intentional. I just wanted to see what happens if I did that. At this point, I'm just taking a shot in the dark because it's weird because I don't understand exactly what's going on behind the scenes in terms of the equation. All I know is that because I'm using a combination of this and I'm using linear interpolation, there's some oddities that are quite strange. Can we go flat? I don't think flat works either. So if we went flat, yeah, so it does nothing. The start value and the end, so the start point and the end point, they can't be the same, which is what results in some pretty weird behavior. So then let's reset this back to 0. And then we will reset this back to, actually I can just go like that. Okay, so 0 to 99. Let's just do this, simplify it. Or sorry, 0 to 1. Okay, so that works, kinda. We want it to go down. So will that work, I wonder? Kind of. Let's scale it and see. 0 to 1. Instead of 1, let's go with 10, just to see what happens there. Okay. So same idea, but now just multiplied by 10. Same thing. Okay. But now if we take the, what is it? This is the point. Take it down lower. Yeah, actually that kind of works. That does kind of work. So why was it not working before? Okay, so we want it to go down to about here. And then we want it to go up to about here. Okay. That kind of works. I mean, it needs to be smoothed out a little bit, of course, but Okay, so let's see if this works then. Wait, the scale seems off. It seems stretched. Because that versus this one is more stretched. Okay, we'll look at that later. Let's bring them back together, so X and Y. Okay, so that's got a bit more of a jiggle, jello type effect. So it squishes, it vertically heightens, and then it's supposed to go back. I don't know if that's the right position that it's going back to, though. Container. Nope, that's telling me it's the right scale. Maybe it's just a visual anomaly because of the way the pixels are stretched. Okay, so we want it on the Y to be a bit more aggressive initially. And then lighter in the end. Okay, and let's speed it up. I think we're at 0.3. Yeah, I think that works. That way the X and the Y are not scaling together, but they're scaling opposite to each other. It gives a very different effect. I may want to tweak those numbers a bit though. Okay, so let's go and exaggerate it a bit more. Okay, and then the X, same idea. I think a little bit more. Okay, and then if we put in that bounce, does that add anything? A little bit, not much, but it's all of them combined that kind of make it, right? I don't know. I feel like the initial part of the second animation feels a bit slow, but let's save this though, because this is pretty good progress. So we'll copy component, stop it, paste component values, and then apply it to the prefab. Okay, and then we'll change the scene back to the game room. How are we doing for time? Oh wow, I'm over my time. Okay, so I won't have time to tweak with it anymore, but I hope you guys enjoyed it so far. There's always going to be challenges, but that's what makes it interesting is the challenges. Oh, controller is not on. Connect. Okay. But it's the challenges that make it interesting, and overcoming those challenges is what's rewarding. So here's what it looks like now. right? So I think that's okay. So there's definitely some weird stuff going on, but we'll figure it out at a later point. But I think it looks better in terms of the animation with all of it coming together. There's definitely some more stuff that I need to figure out. But yeah, so that's going to be it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. And next broadcast will be on Friday, of course. That's so strange that it does that. Yeah, something messes up with the animation there. I'll look at it at a later time. But yeah, so if you like it, please hit that follow button. If you missed any of it, or if you want to watch any of the previous ones, they'll be archived up onto YouTube. You're welcome to join the Discord channel. It's more about just the game and not so much about development. And whenever I do go live and I do broadcast, I do mention it both on Twitter and on Instagram. So if you follow me on either one of those, you'll know exactly when I'll be going live. But that's going to be it for me today. So thank you for watching. Have a great evening, and I'll see you next time.